Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my library. Today I'm here to bring you all of the 5-star reads that I read in 2020. So 2020 was a bit of a wild year. I don't think I had that great of a reading year overall. I did read some really great books, but I also read some very okay books. I think majority of the books that I rated were 3-star. And yeah, I'm just here to share with you the books that I enjoyed the most out of 2020. A lot of these I'm not going to go into detail about because I did mention them in my favourite books of 2020, but because I went through month by month instead of rating like my top books of 2020, I just am going to go, there's a few extra ones that I didn't get to talk about in that video that I still want to shine a light on. So before we get started, if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, I would love for you to join this chaotic channel and like my journey with books. And yeah, I'd just love for you to join. So it just so happens that I've read 25-star reads in 2020. So this sums up everything nicely. I'm going to go through from the start of the year all the way down through to December and just give you a brief reason as to why I loved them, I guess. I probably won't have a lot of memory in the ones that I read at the start of the year because I'm very bad with remembering like specifics and people's names. I'm so bad with remembering people's names. So I do apologize, but let's just get into it. So my first 5-star read wasn't until March last year, and I felt like the first 2 months while I read a decent amount of books, it was like the average that I read usually, I didn't love all of them or any of them as much as I loved some other books further along in the year. So my first 5-star read was Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. I have talked about this in my best books of 2020, so that is in there. The video will be linked down below if you're interested. But yeah, I love this graphic novel. It is absolutely adorable. It's wholesome. It's my favourite. So I'm excited to have volume 4 this year, and it'll probably make it into my top reads for this year. Then the second book that is on this list is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. At this point I think everyone has read this series. It is phenomenal. I didn't rate the first book 5 stars. I think I rated it 4 stars, but this one is just like kind of just took it up a notch, and it was definitely something that I enjoyed. And then after that I ended up reading The Toll, which was my next 5-star read. This is the conclusion novel in the Scythe series. I don't even know what to say about this. It was a little bit confusing to begin with, trying to like get all the timelines and things like that sorted, and then once they merged together right at the end, I think that final was just like so good and so well done. Like, I don't know how Neal Shusterman does it, but the way that he kind of weaves everything and everything kind of entangles at the end and in its own way is just so intriguing to me, and it's so well done. I absolutely loved it. The next book that I read that was 5 stars is something that I've been talking about on my channel since I read it, which is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This book blew my mind, and I will never stop talking about it, I don't think, because it was just something that I absolutely loved, and I'm never gonna be over it, let's be real. And then we are moving our way into May, which I read a lot of good books in May, and I'm really thankful for that. The first one I read in May was Letters to the Lost. This is another one that's also on my best books of 2020, rightly so. This one, I think what made it so good for me was that it was just so unexpected. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and I think this one is just so underhyped. If you haven't read this book, I'd urge you to pick it up because it was just brilliant, and I just couldn't put it down. I think I read it in like a day. And then again in May I was a part of a readathon, so you had to read like 12 books or something. So I was trying to get through them, and I read this little small book, Perks of Being a Wallflower. This is a reread for me. I hadn't read it for years. Like, the first time I picked it up was right when I started reading again, and it's just, I think it made me reflect a lot on the kind of person I am and the kind of friends that I had, and I think this is just such a modern day classic. And because I'm not a huge fan of like normal classics or like the older classics, this is just something that was like just something I loved to go back to and reread. I loved it as much as I did the first time I read it, and that's so unlike me, so it just definitely held up. So I'm really glad that I enjoyed this one. And I ended up concluding the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy in May as well, and this one, again, 5 stars, because how could it not be? I absolutely loved this concluding novel, and I can't wait for there to be more, because I know Victoria is writing more. But this just felt like such a good concluding novel, and it kind of wrapped everything up nicely the way I wanted it to, and I just love Lila and Kel so much. And even the brother, I can never remember his name, but Kel's brother, he's just like, I love him too. Then the next book I rated 5 stars is The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levensteller. I love anything that Tricia writes, and I will read everything that she writes, because the main characters that she writes are just so perfect for me, and I think that's why I love all of her books, because I just vibe with them so well. So that obviously has to make it onto the list. Then I also read Loveless by Alice Oseman. Again, I have talked about this on my channel before. This one is really dear to my heart, and I think it's something, not so much that I had fun reading it, it was just something really impactful and something that I could really relate to on a level that I haven't had in such a long time. I really saw myself in that main character, and I think that that was so important for me to read something like that, and I'm just really glad that it's even ever been written and I had the opportunity to read it. So it obviously has to make it onto this list. Then I ended up reading A Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. I don't remember a lot of the stories. There was one in particular that I absolutely loved out of here, but I couldn't even tell you which one it is anymore. It's been such a long time since I read this. I really did enjoy going back to the Grishaverse and just kind of immersing myself back into that and reading these kind of short stories, like these little folklore legend stories. It was just super intriguing, and it was like a little added extra that I really enjoyed. And now I have a whole heap of books. This is kind of where I went off the rails with books that I owned, because I'm supposed to be reading my TBR, and then like almost all of the other books other than one are books that I borrowed from my library, because I'm trash and I see all these books on my shelves and I'm like, I'll just read something else, like a lot of us do, I think. So the next one that I read was Wild at Heart, which is the sequel to Simple Wild. I obviously adored this second book in the duology. Was just, it was so good, and like, I've said it once before and I'll say it again, I could literally read like their day-to-day lives, Jonah and Calla. I could just read every day of their lives and I would be content with doing that. I just love these characters so much, and the world, and I could literally just reread this book over and over again. And after that I got into my historical fiction obsession for a little bit, where I read a whole heap of Tessa Dare books, so obviously one of them had to make it on here. That one is Say Yes to the Marquess. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm gonna pronounce it. This one was really interesting. I love how Tessa Dare does feminist historical novels. So all of these main characters are like strong independent females, and they don't really need a man, but they end up falling in love with one, and I think it's really cute, and I really loved it, and I just really enjoyed that. So this one was the one that I enjoyed the most out of all of her books. After that I read Darius the Great Deserves Better, and this one again was another important read for me. I found this one so important in my reflection on my own life, and I don't have a lot of books on here that are books that have made me reflect on my own life and the position I'm in and the friends that I have and what I'm giving back to the world and what I'm giving back to my friends and things like that. And this one is definitely one of those ones that really made me reflect on the kind of person that I am and the kind of person that I want to be. And I think that's really important, and it was just something that I really needed in 2020, considering everything that was going on. It was kind of good to just sit and reflect and kind of better myself, and I really appreciated that from this book. And then I read the novella Memento by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This little flashback into the Illuminae Files world just gave me all of the vibes back. Like when I read it, I was just like, I need to go back and reread the Illuminae files because I absolutely loved them. Gemina is like my favorite book of all time, so I think that reading that is just like just re-sparked my love for that series, because I haven't read it since like my first year back into reading. I remember when I started watching booktube videos, Illuminae was like on everyone's top lists at the end of the year, and I was like, oh, I'll just give it a go. And then I read it and I was like, oh my god, it like deserves to be up there. And then I read the second one and it was just like best book of all time. So this one I really enjoyed, and I loved going back to Aiden and kind of seeing how everything started, and I just really want to go back and reread those novels. And the last 6 books are all books I read in December. So a lot of these I have also recently talked about in my December wrap up. Those again will be linked in the description below. The first one that I read is Boyfriend Material, Enemies to Lovers, gay main character. Like, it was just so good. And I think it was kind of like, his dad is like a celebrity, so he's kind of like this semi-celebrity, but it was just, I don't know, it was just, his character was just so good, and I just remember loving it. And like, he's kind of this bad boy with this bad reputation, and not so much a bad boy, he definitely just has that bad reputation, and the thought of like fake dating and like falling in love, and it was just like, oh, it was just, yeah, it was a good book. So if you haven't read that one, you gotta put that on your list. Then I read the novella for The Simple Wild, which is Forever Wild, and this is just like such a wholesome going back to this world and these characters and getting to see them for the last time, because I know this is the last book that she's going to write with these characters. So it was hard to say goodbye, but it was also everything that I could have ever wanted. I'm just really glad that it exists, and I can't wait to reread them. The next book I read is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This book, whoa, I remember reading this book and it was like not what I was expecting. Like, people said that it was like sexual tension and like steamy, and then this is like nothing that I've ever read before. Like, I was blushing in public, and I was just like listening to it on my audiobook, and I was just like, it reminds me of that TikTok where it's like, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, and I just, yeah, that was me when I was reading this in public, and I just like, just act normal, just pretend nothing's happening. Then the last book that I actually own is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book was just everything that I could have ever wanted. I absolutely loved it. It's kind of like a second chance love, and it was just she kind of still doesn't like him after the first thing that happened, the stuff that happened in the past. So it's almost like friends to lovers to enemies to lovers, and it was just it's everything I ever wanted. I love Christina Lauren. I'm glad a book of theirs made it onto this list this year, because I don't even know if I could have called myself a Christina Lauren fan if it didn't make it onto this list, out of the amount of books that I actually read from them this year. At least one of them is on here, right? The next book, the second last book that I read, is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This book, male-male romance, trans main character, culture, spirits, death. Oh, it was just bad boy, enemies to lovers. It was just like everything that I could have ever wanted, and the representation and the diversity was just like, yes. It was just, it had everything that I could have ever wanted, and it was just such a good novel. And then the last book that I read for 2020 that was a 5-star read is Inner Holidays by Christina Lauren. So 2 books ended up making it onto this list. I think I liked this one so much just because I read it right before Christmas, and I was like getting in those festive vibes, and I was just really feeling it. Again, Christina Lauren, enemies to lovers-ish, I guess. They were like friends to lovers, really. And it was just everything I could have ever wanted, and a great way to end the reading year. So let me know in the comments below some of your favorite books from 2020. I'd be really interested to know, so that I can add them to my list for 2021 if I haven't already read them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!